This week, the nation remembers Hurricane Katrina. This year, marking 20 years, 2 decades, since one of the deadliest and most destructive storms in American history. Katrina first made landfall in Florida. It had just become a Category 1 storm. It got much more intense in the Gulf. The most devastating damage struck the Gulf Coast. And to reflect on that 2005 catastrophe, Fox Weather is sharing the stories of those who endured it. And one of those survivors is Emily Good. She was just 13 years old when her family left New Orleans for a family trip to Atlanta. They had no idea that their lives were about to change forever. Just days later, Katrina struck, and they couldn't go back. Their house, their pets, life as they knew it, everything was lost back in New Orleans. And right now, Emily joins us to share more of her family's story, their resilience since then. Emily, thank you for being here with us on Fox Weather. You were just a teenager when this happened. What was that like? Could you even comprehend the scale of the tragedy that was playing out?
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. I think when you're 13 years old, you have a very different lens of what's going on. My parents did a very good job of shielding us from the 24/7 news coverage. So I think the true impact of what was happening really didn't set in probably until a month after the fact, when my parents were able to return to New Orleans and to our home.
And what they found, I'm sure, how they even told you that as a teenager, how you could process that loss, even your family pets. What was that like for you and for the whole community? This was a place that was literally changed forever.
Yes, I think losing our pets was probably the most challenging for me emotionally, along with just a total loss of community. You know, this was back in the days of the first generation of flip phones. I had left my phone on my desk at home, didn't think I would need it for the weekend. I think we had MySpace back then, but it was pretty limited. And so just imagine, you know, not knowing where your friends are, where your family is. The cell towers were all down. So I think it was just difficult to feel that sense of connection and feel that sense of community and having a shared experience. So while I was able to rally around my family and have them with me, it also felt very, very isolating.
It's hell, truly, and that's at any age, never mind being a teenager. Emily, you lost your mom 5 years ago. Prior to her passing, she wrote an essay about Katrina every year. How has her memory influenced how you remember what happened with Katrina? I would imagine that was an exercise, a good one, to help process that trauma that played out.
Absolutely. I was actually looking back on my mom's essays ahead of doing this interview and ahead of the anniversary, just to see what pockets of memories might come up. She wrote one once a year ahead of the anniversary up until the 10th anniversary. And I think there were a lot of things that I probably subconsciously forgot and blocked out, but my mom was a very beautiful, descriptive writer. And so just to experience it all over again through her eyes it's just given me a different outlook on what we went through. And she did write, I think it was on the 5-year anniversary, she wrote about how me and my sister were finally starting to open up and verbally process what had happened to us, thanks to a lot of therapy and being with our community. So just it's comforting to read her words again and also to feel closer to her in that way.
I could certainly understand that. Those feelings come rushing back, but you have to feel it so you can heal from it. And this was such a devastating thing, not just for one family or one city, for the whole region. And now here we are 2 decades later, 20 years this year. What message do you hope that people across the country hear as we reflect back on Katrina?
That's a really great question. I think for me, if I could take 2 messages away from it, of course there are many. The first is resiliency. I mean, you don't know what you're made of until you're put to the test. And I think I always envisioned Katrina being my, singular traumatic experience that would really define my life. We always talk about pre-Katrina, post-Katrina as a marker of time. But, I've been through a lot since then. And I think it just goes to show when you have your people around you. And I was very fortunate and privileged to, find a school to go to when we were in Atlanta and be put into school. And there were so many who were less fortunate, but that resiliency is so key, especially, when I think about rebuilding efforts in North Carolina from Hurricane Helene last year. And I live in Austin, Texas now, and we just had, terrible flooding the weekend of July 4th in Central Texas. And so you have to really dig deep and find that resiliency because you're in it for the long haul. The news cameras go away, but it doesn't go away for you. And I think the second message is also, it's on all of us, from the immigrant workers who met my parents at our flooded out home and helped them gut it, to the neighbors in Atlanta who helped clothe us and find housing for us, to the people that rallied behind us when we moved back to New Orleans on New Year's Day in 2006. It's on all of us to come together.
Yeah, Emily, what you just described is why it's so important to remember and reflect on these kinds of things, because they're directly applicable to things that we're still dealing with, even some of the weather events, as you pointed out, and what's been a challenging year this year. Emily Good, thank you for being with us here on Fox Weather. Thank you for sharing your story.
Of course. Thanks for having me.